Hello again from southeastern Finland in northern Europe. This is for the time being my last historical video in the series covering the specific events of given years, or the selected events of given years. The year is 1934. In that year, the New Deal socio-economic policies aimed at preserving capitalism and democracy in the United States while making the federal government much more active in stabilizing and stimulating the nation's economy when necessary, was proceeding rather swiftly. In the United States, the unemployment rate was falling as a result of economic stimulus measures such as various public works projects. And in November 1934, the US Democratic Party achieved huge victories in the midterm congressional elections and also gained new governorships and mayorships. In the Soviet Union, the so-called 5-year economic plan, centrally planned by the Politburo, in effect the country's virtual government because it was the ruling Communist Party's central group, was proceeding. In Germany, the so-called Night of the Long Knives, which began on June the 30th, ended all significant opposition to the emerging Nazi regime, which virtually had already been established in March and April 1933 due to the Nazis' victory in the partly rigged parliamentary or federal parliamentary elections and the passage of the so-called Enabling Act, which allowed the government of Nazi leader, then Reich Chancellor Adolf Hitler, to legislate without the Reichstag's approval. Then was followed by the Gleichschaltung, or unification or uniformization of or concentration of Germany. And when the aged and increasingly nominal Reich president Marshal Paul von Hindenburg passed away on August the 2nd, 1934, Hitler proclaimed himself Führer, combining the offices of Reich President and Reich Chancellor, becoming Germany's dictator. This was confirmed by a plebiscite or referendum, which was at least partly rigged on August the 19th, where supposedly something like 90% of the participating German voters approved of the new order. In France, Germany's main Western neighbor, democracy was shaking, and populist and right-wing or far-right French protesters tried in early February 1934 to storm the French parliament, or at least its lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, but failed. And then there was that scandal where an embezzler named Alexandre or Serge Stavisky received through fraud a huge sum of money, but then when French police officers came to arrest him, or before they could come to arrest him and catch him, he committed suicide. In Estonia, the head of state and at the same time Prime Minister, Mr. Konstantin Pats, proclaimed a state of emergency in March 1934, becoming effectively the country's dictatorial leader, a position that he would hold until June 1940. In Estonia's southern neighbor Latvia, I think in May 1934, Prime Minister Karlis Ulmanis made the same move and would remain that country's authoritarian leader or dictator until the Soviet occupation of the country in June 1940. And Estonia and Lithuania would also be officially occupied by the Soviet Union in June 1940. In Austria, the authoritarian or autocratic federal chancellor or prime minister, Mr. Engelbert Dollfuss, overcame the social democratic opposition to his rule during the 2-week civil war in February 1934. Then he abolished in its democratic form the Nationalrat, or Federal National Council, meaning the Austrian Federal Parliament's lower house. The May 1st, 1934 constitution proclaimed Austria a democratic state of estates or rigid social classes and so-called corporatist state. Dollfuss's dictatorship was short-lived because already on July 25th, 1934, a group of Austrian Nazis, under the pretext of having some legitimate business in the federal chancellor's office, entered the building and assassinated Dollfuss. In Bulgaria, southeastern Europe, Tsar or King Boris III proclaimed himself a dictator in 1934. The autocratic or authoritarian Yugoslav King Alexander I was assassinated by a Bulgarian-born terrorist, Mr. Vlado Chernozemski, in Marseille on France's Mediterranean coast, shortly after he had arrived there on a state visit in October 1934. So let us now look at that year's events more in detail. It was a so-called common year, a 365-day year, and in the Gregorian calendar, it began on Monday. On January 1st, 1934, the International Telecommunication Union was established. On January 20th, the Japanese company Fuji Photo Film was established. On January 26th, Germany and Poland signed a 10-year non-aggression pact, which Germany unilaterally broke in April 1939. On January 30th, the first anniversary of Hitler's appointment as the Reich Chancellor, or Federal Prime Minister, the political power of federal states such as Prussia, which had been the bulwark of the Social Democratic Party, was substantially abolished by the law on the reconstruction of the Reich, Gesetz über den Neuaufbau des Reiches. On February 6th, the French far-right leagues rallied in front of the Palais Bourbon in an attempted but failed coup d'etat against the Third Republic. On February 9th, Mr. Gaston Doumergue formed a new government in France. On the same day, Greece, Romania, Turkey, and Yugoslavia formed the Balkan Pact. From February 12th to 16th, the Fatherland Front, a group of conservative and far-right political parties and movements, consolidated its power in Austria in a series of clashes across Austria, the Austrian Civil War. So it did not last 2 weeks, but rather 4 days. On February 16th, the Commission of Government was sworn in as a form of direct rule for the Dominion of Newfoundland. It would last until Newfoundland's joining of Canada on March 31st, 1949. Augusto Cesar Sandino was assassinated in Managua, Nicaragua, Central America, by the National Guard, but his memory would be preserved by the Sandinistas. On February 23rd, King Leopold III of Belgium succeeded to the throne in Western Europe following the death of his father, King Albert I. On March 1st, Manchuria in northeastern China became Manchukuo, following an invasion by the Japanese. And on March the 12th, Prime Minister in duties of the State Elder or Head of State, Mr. Konstantin Pats, and General Juhan Laidoner, the Estonian Army's commander-in-chief, staged a coup in Estonia to neutralize the popular right-wing or far-right VAPS movement, starting the era of silence. The Riigikogu, or Estonian parliament, initially approved of their actions. On March the 24th, 1934, the Tydings-McDuffie Act was passed, allowing the Philippines in Southeastern Asia a greater degree of self-government from the United States. The Philippines, however, would not become a fully independent country until 1946. On April the 21st, 1934, London gynecologist Robert Kenneth Wilson took a photograph of the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland, but in 1994 it was proved to be an elaborate hoax. On May the 1st, 1934, the new Austrian constitution took into effect, heralding the beginning of the Austro-fascist federal state of Austria. On May the 15th, 1934, Prime Minister Kārlis Ulmanis established an authoritarian government in Latvia, Northern Europe. On May the 19th, Mr. Kimon Georgiev staged a coup d'etat in Bulgaria, Southeastern Europe. On May the 23rd, American outlaws Bonnie and Clyde were ambushed and killed by police in Bienville Parish, Louisiana. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born in October 1910, therefore she was 23 when she was killed. Clyde Barrow was born in March 1909, so he was 25 when he was killed. They were American criminals who traveled the central United States with their gang during the Great Depression, known for their bank robberies, although they preferred to rob small stores or rural gas stations. Their exploits captured the attention of the American public during the public enemy era between 1931 to 1934. They probably killed at least 9 police officers and several civilians. On May the 28th, 1934, near Callander, Ontario, the Dion quintuplets, 5 girls, were born to Oliva and Elzire Dion, or Elzire Dion, becoming the first quintuplets to survive infancy. 2 of those 5 ladies are still alive. On June the 9th, the Silly Symphonies animated a short, The Wise Little Hen, featuring the debut of Donald Duck, and that was released. On June the 10th, 1934, Italy beat Czechoslovakia 2-1 after extra time to win the 1934 World Cup of men's football staged in Italy. On June the 12th, political parties were banned in Bulgaria. On June the 14th, Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini met for the first time at the Venice Biennale. From June the 30th to July the 2nd, on the so-called night, or during the so-called Night of the Long Knives in Germany, Nazis purged the Sturmabteilung SA, the left-wing Strasserist faction of the Nazi Party, and prominent conservative anti-Nazis, including former Reich Chancellor Kurt von Schleicher, in a series of political murders. On July the 13th, Hitler gave a speech to the Reichstag, which by then had become filled with Nazis and their sympathizers. and was only a rubber stamp parliament justifying his purge. On July the 15th, the American film industry began to rigorously enforce the Motion Picture Production Code. On July the 25th, a group of Austrian Nazis assassinated the autocratic or authoritarian federal chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss during a failed coup attempt. On August the 2nd, 1934, the aged and increasingly nominal German Reich president Paul von Hindenburg died, making Adolf Hitler the Führer or dictator of Germany. On August the 19th, in a referendum, according to the official and probably exaggerated results, 90% of the participating German voters approved of Hitler's assumption of presidential powers as Führer and Reichskanzler. From September the 5th to 10th, the 6th Nuremberg Rally was staged by the German Nazi Party. On September the 19th, the Soviet Union joined the League of Nations. On the same day, a German-American immigrant, Mr. Bruno Hauptmann, was arrested in connection with the Lindbergh babies kidnapping case in the United States. On September the 21st, the Muroto typhoon in Honshu, Japan, killed 3,036 people, destroying the temple, schools, and other buildings in Osaka. On September the 28th, Afghanistan joined the League of Nations. On October the 2nd, a tornado in Osaka and Kyoto killed 1,660 people and injured 5,400 people and destroyed the rice harvest. On October the 9th, 1934, King Alexander I of Yugoslavia was assassinated, and then in an attempt to kill his assassin, Mr. Vlado Chernozemski, a French police officer or soldier accidentally shot the French Foreign Minister Louis Barthou, who bled to death because of inadequate or too slow medical care during the king's state visit to France, which began in the French Mediterranean port city of Marseille. On October the 16th, the Long March of the People's Liberation Army of the Communist Party of China, led by Mr. Mao Zedong, began. From October the 20th to November the 3rd, Charles Kingsford Smith made the first eastward crossing of the Pacific Ocean from his native Brisbane, Australia, to San Francisco in Lockheed Altair Lady Southern Cross. The November the 3rd Hawaii to San Francisco leg was the first eastward flight from Hawaii to North America. On November the 23rd, an Anglo or British Ethiopian boundary commission in the Ogaden discovered an Italian garrison at Walwal, which lied well within the Ethiopian territory. This encounter led to the Abyssinia crisis, which by the autumn of 1935 resulted in the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, and by the spring of 1936, Italy had occupied at least most of Ethiopia. On November the 27th, Daniel Salamanca Urey, president of Bolivia in South America, was deposed in a military coup and replaced by José Luis Tejada Sorzano. On December the 5th, Ethiopian and Italian troops exchanged gunfire. Reported casualties for the Ethiopians were 150 and for the Italians 50. On December the 27th, Persia became Iran. On December the 29th, Japan renounced the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 and the London Naval Treaty of 1930.